They left the Titanic Starship to rot. A human mechanic made it the galaxy's strongest weapon. The Titanic had been dead for decades. Once, it had ruled the galaxy with its massive guns and unstoppable engines. Now, it drifted in the cold emptiness of space, forgotten, rusting, and silent. Its enormous frame, bigger than some small planets, cast a shadow over the asteroid belt it had become stranded near. Most of the galaxy thought the Titanic was useless. Alien powers, smug and confident, laughed at the idea that anyone could fix it. They saw it as a relic, a hulk of metal and memories, left to rot like an old monument. To them, it was junk, but not to Callan. Callan was a human mechanic, small in stature but sharp in mind. He had worked on star freighters, space stations, and military drones, but nothing as big as the Titanic. His hands were scarred from years of welding and repairing, his fingers steady and precise. Where others saw decay, he saw potential. He floated toward the Titanic in his small shuttle, the engine buzzing quietly. The asteroid belt was dangerous, full of jagged rocks and hidden debris. Most pilots avoided it, but Callan had studied the trajectory carefully. Humans were clever, he liked to remind himself. Planning, thinking ahead, improvising, these were his weapons. The shuttle touched the massive hull of the Titanic. Callan strapped himself into a magnetic harness and clung to the side. The surface was cold and rough, scarred by years of neglect. Panels had rusted away, vents were clogged with space dust, and strange growths of alien fungi had begun to creep over the edges. Callan took a deep breath and entered through an access hatch. The inside smelled of old metal and recycled air. The lights flickered weakly as his flashlight cut through the darkness. For a moment, the silence was almost complete. Then, a soft hum of residual power reached his ears. The Titanic was not dead. Not yet. He walked through the corridors, marveling at the sheer scale of the ship. The walls were lined with ancient control panels, most of them covered in dust and rust. The decks were enormous, stretching far beyond his shuttle's size. He imagined how battles might have looked when the ship had been alive. Energy beams cutting through the void, engines roaring, guns firing with unstoppable force. Hard to believe something so powerful can be left to die, he muttered to himself. Callan's first task was to assess what could be salvaged. He accessed the engineering room, a vast space filled with dormant machinery. The engines were colossal, frozen in place, their energy cores dimmed but intact. He ran his hand over the metal surface and felt its latent power. It was like touching a giant beast that had simply gone to sleep. "Sleep well, old friend," he whispered. "I'll wake you up again." Hours passed as he moved through the ship, cataloging the systems. Life support was mostly offline but repairable. The weapons systems were ancient, designed for wars humans had never fought. The navigation AI had been deactivated for decades, but some memory banks still hummed faintly. Callan smiled. This was not a challenge, it was a playground. He moved to the central control room, a massive dome with a panoramic view of the asteroid belt outside. Broken screens flickered weakly, showing fragments of star charts and old battle logs. Callan sat at the captain's chair, testing the old controls. Sparks flew from some terminals, but most responded to his touch. He had only begun, and already the Titanic was waking. Then he heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible sound, a beep, coming from a corner of the room he had not touched. He walked over, and a console flickered to life. Green lights pulsed rhythmically, and a voice spoke through the crackling speakers. "Unknown operator detected. Accessing security protocols." Callan froze for a moment, then grinned. "Well, I guess I'm officially on board." It had been dormant, waiting for someone competent to activate it. Callan spent the next hours communicating with the AI, coaxing it to reveal what it remembered. Most of it was old, outdated information, but some systems responded surprisingly well. Defensive shields, propulsion circuits, and targeting arrays could still function, with the right adjustments. As night fell over the asteroid belt, Callan stood in the central dome and looked out into the void. The stars were distant and cold, but he felt alive. Most humans never got the chance to touch a ship like this. Most humans never got the chance to make history. Kalen's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alarm. A red light flashed across the deck. He turned to the main console and saw a warning. Unauthorized activity detected in surrounding space. Before he could react, a blinding pulse of energy shot past the hull, and an alien scout ship appeared, scanning the Titanic aggressively. They were fast, sleek, and armed with energy weapons far superior to anything humans used. They assumed the Titanic was abandoned, but now it had a human inside. Kalen's heart raced. He had no weapons, no fleet, nothing but his wits and the Titanic's dormant systems. But he didn't panic. Humans were unpredictable, he reminded himself. That was always their advantage. He rushed to the engineering room and began rerouting power to the shield generators. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the lights flickered. The shields hummed weakly at first, then stabilized. The scout ship fired a warning shot, bouncing harmlessly off the faint barrier. Kalen smirked. Not bad for a first try. He ran to the weapons bay next. Most guns were offline, but he found smaller turrets that could be reactivated quickly. Using manual overrides and improvised circuits, he brought them online. The scout ship's sensors registered the energy signatures, and it hesitated, unsure of what it faced. For the first time in decades, the Titanic responded to a human's command. It moved slightly, its massive engines stirring as if stretching after a long sleep. The scout ship fired again, and this time the response was real. A pulse from one of the turrets struck the alien vessel, damaging its hull and forcing it to retreat. Kalen laughed, a sound full of triumph and disbelief. Not so easy to scare humans, huh? He took a moment to examine the damage to the Titanic itself. Sparks, broken panels, and minor hull breaches were easy to repair. The real challenge was the alien attention now focused on him. He knew they would return, stronger, with more ships. But that didn't scare him. It excited him. For decades, the Titanic had been left to rot, but humans didn't just fix things. Humans improved things. Palin began sketching ideas in his datapad. New weapons configurations, shield reinforcements, propulsion enhancements. He imagined a ship that could not only defend itself, but strike with unmatched power. The asteroid belt around him was quiet again, but he could feel eyes on him from distant points in space. The galaxy would soon notice the Titanic was awake, and when it did, they would not know what hit them. As he rested for the first time in hours, Kalen thought about the scale of his task. One human against the galaxy's assumptions on a ship no one thought could live again. But humans were always underestimated, always, and that was their greatest weapon. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. Inside, the Titanic stirred like a sleeping giant. And somewhere in the shadows of its massive hull, a small human smiled. Tomorrow, he would begin the real work, turning the Titanic from abandoned junk into the galaxy's strongest weapon. The galaxy had forgotten the Titanic, but not Kalen. Every day he spent on the ship was a day of discovery, repair, and improvisation. The alien scout that had fired upon the derelict battleship in the asteroid belt had vanished, but Kalen knew it would not be the last visitor. The galaxy never ignored power for long. Inside the engineering deck, Kalen worked tirelessly. His tools glowed under the dim lights as he repaired circuits, replaced corroded conduits, and rerouted energy flows. He spoke to the ship as if it were a living creature. "You can do better," he said softly. "You're not just a relic. You're more than they ever imagined." The Titanic responded in small ways. A hum here, a flicker of light there. Proof that the massive ship was waking. Its old AI, dormant for decades, began to react. Lines of code slowly unfolded across the main console, showing maps of weapon systems, engine capacities, and shield strength. Most of it was outdated, designed for battles humans had never fought. But Kalen didn't mind. He was human. He didn't just use old tools. He improved them. Hours turned into days as Kalen explored deeper systems. He found weapons bays, long sealed, and engines covered in rust. He spent hours studying schematics, cross-referencing alien technology he had scavenged from previous missions. Using scrap metal, spare energy cores, and his ingenuity, he began building modifications. Small turrets became dual-purpose cannons. Engines were rewired to increase speed and maneuverability. For the first time, the Titanic was more than it had ever been. But ingenuity alone wasn't enough. Alien fleets were monitoring the outer systems, curious about the strange energy surges coming from the asteroid belt. Kalen knew they would return. They always did when humans were involved. One morning, while testing the new energy pulse cannons, alarms blared across the ship. The AI's voice, rough and mechanical, echoed in the control room. Multiple unauthorized vessels detected. Range, 30,000 kilometers. Threat level, high. Kalen's eyes narrowed. Show me. The main screens flickered to life. A squadron of alien fighters emerged from the void, sleek and deadly. Their hulls glinted under distant starlight, and energy beams traced the edges of the asteroid belt. They had come to finish what the scout had started. Kalen didn't panic. Humans were unpredictable. That was their edge. He activated the newly repaired shields. Energy flowed from the reactor cores, forming a faint, shimmering barrier around the ship. The alien squadron fired first, but the shots bounced harmlessly off the shields. "Nice try," Kalen muttered, "but it's going to take more than that." He moved to the weapons control deck. Turrets swiveled into position under his command. The pulse cannons hummed as energy built within their cores. Kalen targeted the lead alien ship, aiming not to destroy, but to warn. A single shot tore past the vacuum, striking the hull and sending a shockwave that forced the enemy squadron to scatter. The aliens weren't used to this. No human had ever dared to fight the Titanic, let alone repair it. Kalen smiled, adrenaline pumping. That's one down. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Kalen repaired minor hull breaches, rerouted power to shields, and tested the engine's newly rewired circuits. He studied the enemy tactics, learning their patterns, predicting their movements. The Titanic, once slow and clumsy, now moved with precision, reacting almost instinctively to Kalen's commands. By nightfall, the asteroid belt was quiet again. Kalen sat in the central dome, staring out at the stars. He had survived the first real encounter, but he knew it was only the beginning. The galaxy would not ignore the Titanic forever, and Kalen intended to make it impossible for them to ignore. The next days were a whirlwind of upgrades. Kalen scoured the ship for old drone bays, discovering units long forgotten. Using his knowledge of alien tech, he repaired and reprogrammed them, creating autonomous scouts that could explore and attack independently. He built new energy cannons capable of firing bursts strong enough to pierce alien shields. He strengthened the hull, reinforcing it with alloys scavenged from old storage bays. The Titanic began to hum with life. Lights flickered along the corridors, and the engines roared faintly as if testing themselves. Every system, from life support to navigation, was carefully repaired or enhanced. Kalen worked with precision, but also with creativity, something no alien fleet could match. One evening, the AI spoke again, its mechanical voice softer than before. Human operator. Efficiency levels exceed historical records. Probability of survival in hostile encounters. Increasing exponentially. Kalen chuckled. I don't care about probabilities. I care about results. Unresolved. He spent the next day running simulations. Alien fleets, larger than any he had seen, were projected to attack. Using his modifications, the Titanic could outmaneuver them, using speed, energy bursts, and traps set with debris from the asteroid belt. He refined his plans, drawing every possible scenario. Then came the real test. A larger alien reconnaissance fleet entered the belt, curious about the energy surges they had detected. This time, they were more cautious but more aggressive. Kalen had anticipated their arrival. He activated the Titanic's new cloaking measures, hiding the massive ship in plain sight. As the alien vessels scanned the area, the Titanic remained invisible, a ghost in the void. Then, with precise timing, he struck. Autonomous drones swarmed the fleet, targeting engines and weapons systems. Pulse cannons fired from unexpected angles, creating confusion and chaos. Kalen manipulated the ship like a chess master, moving massive pieces with small, precise motions. One alien fighter after another was disabled, forced to retreat or flee into the asteroid field. By the time the battle ended, the alien squadron was scattered, barely functional. The Titanic had proven its power, and Kalen had proven that human ingenuity could turn even a forgotten relic into a force unmatched by the galaxy. As silence returned, Kalen allowed himself a moment of pride. But he knew this was only the beginning. Larger fleets, stronger enemies, and more cunning adversaries would come. The Titanic was awake, but the galaxy had yet to see the full extent of its power. He walked through the corridors, checking systems and speaking to the AI. "Tomorrow," he said, "we push even further. We make them regret leaving this giant to rot." And in the shadows of the massive ship, sparks flew from improvised circuits, engines hummed with renewed energy, and the pulse cannons glimmered with untapped power. The Titanic was no longer a relic. It was a weapon, a sentinel, a testament to human brilliance. The galaxy had forgotten humanity. It would not make that mistake again. The galaxy had noticed. Reports of a ghost battleship, vast beyond comprehension, had begun spreading from star system to star system. Some called it a myth, a legend, designed to scare young pilots. Others whispered of a human on board, a mechanic who had awakened a ship thought dead for decades. Alien commanders watched warily as energy readings from the asteroid belt grew stronger every day. Kalen knew they were watching. Every scan, every fleet movement was recorded somewhere, and he welcomed the attention. Humans thrived under challenge. Inside the Titanic, life had taken a strange rhythm. Kalen moved like a conductor, orchestrating the massive ship's engines, weapons, and drones. Autonomous scouts flew ahead of the hull, scanning sectors, disabling traps, and learning enemy routines. Shields shimmered constantly, a living barrier of energy, while pulse cannons, redesigned and upgraded, hummed with lethal potential. Old engines, once sluggish and heavy, now flexed like living muscles. Weapons designed decades ago had been enhanced with scavenged alien technology, creating hybrid devices no one had imagined. The ship was no longer just functional. It was a masterpiece. Colin leaned against a console in the command deck, studying star charts. Alien fleets had begun to gather in the outer systems. Reports indicated that multiple species, once rivals, had joined forces to hunt the Titanic. They assumed a single human could not manage a ship of such scale. They were wrong. "Three fleets converging in the sector ahead," the AI said. Its voice had softened, almost respectful now. "Probability of successful engagement, 52%. Kalen shook his head. "You worry too much," he said. "Humans don't fight by probability. We fight by thinking." 3 alien fleets, each stronger than any Kalen had encountered, entered the asteroid belt. Thousands of ships, all sleek and armed with devastating weapons, formed a blockade meant to trap the Titanic. Kalen's heart raced, not with fear, but with anticipation. He activated the ship's new maneuvering systems, engines groaning as they twisted and flexed. The Titanic moved like a predator, dodging energy beams that could have destroyed smaller ships instantly. Autonomous drones swarmed the enemies, hitting critical points with precision strikes. Some ships were disabled without a shot being fired from the Titanic itself. The alien commanders realized their mistake too late. The Titanic was not just a ship. It was a human mind in motion, anticipating every attack, turning every disadvantage into an advantage. Kalen had prepared traps in the asteroid belt. Small asteroids, previously useless, were now weapons. He rerouted energy through magnetic fields, pulling debris into the paths of pursuing ships. Alien vessels collided with rocks or were disabled by sudden energy pulses, unable to react fast enough. From the central command deck, Kalen directed every move. Shields up, pulse cannons ready, drones, flank left and right. His voice was calm, but every word dictated life or death for the alien fleets. The battle raged for hours. The Titanic, massive and seemingly slow, moved with incredible precision. Every strike, every dodge, every counterattack had been calculated. Alien beams struck the hull, but the reinforced armor absorbed them. Pulse cannons tore through enemy shields. Drones targeted engines, disabling ships in seconds. Even the alien commanders began to notice patterns. Patterns only a human mind could make. They adapted, changing formations, trying to predict the Titanic's next move. But Kalen was always one step ahead. He used misdirection, false retreats, and sudden bursts of energy to confuse them. In the midst of the chaos, Kalen discovered something remarkable. The Titanic, once a slow, cumbersome relic, could now operate at speeds rivaling any modern warship. By rerouting energy from shields to engines and carefully managing power flow, he created bursts of incredible acceleration. Enemy ships, confident in their speed advantage, were suddenly outmaneuvered by a human. Hours passed, and the alien fleets were in disarray. Ships scattered, communications broke down, and panic spread among their ranks. Kalen felt a surge of satisfaction, but he didn't let himself celebrate. There was still work to be done. He directed the Titanic into the heart of the asteroid belt, a dangerous move, but calculated with precision. The massive ship twisted and turned, weaving through rocky terrain that would have destroyed any other vessel. Alien scouts tried to follow, only to crash into hidden mines and debris fields set up by Kalen. Human creativity, he muttered to himself, watching the chaos unfold. They never saw it coming. By nightfall, the battle had ended. The alien fleets had retreated, many ships destroyed or heavily damaged. The asteroid belt was littered with debris, but the Titanic remained unscathed. Kalen walked through the corridors, inspecting systems and drones. Every part of the ship had worked perfectly. Every innovation, every adjustment had paid off. For the first time, he allowed himself a moment of pride. But the galaxy would not forget. Word of the ghost battleship spread like wildfire. Alien commanders, previously confident in their superiority, began to fear the human who had awakened the Titanic. Reports of its abilities were exaggerated with every retelling. By the time the fleets reached the next system, whispers of a human mechanic who could turn rust into a weapon had already reached star councils. Kalen knew they were watching. Every sensor, every scout, every fleet movement was proof of it, and he didn't intend to hide. Humanity was underestimated, and that had always been their advantage. He began preparing for the next step. If the galaxy thought a single battle was impressive, they had no idea what was coming. The Titanic was more than a ship. It was a symbol, a reminder that humans, small and often ignored, could achieve the impossible with intelligence, creativity, and determination. In the quiet moments between battles, Kalen continued his work. He strengthened engines, improved weapons, and tested new energy shields. The ship responded to him like a living creature, humming with power and anticipation. Every corridor, every deck, every system bore the mark of human ingenuity. The AI, once dormant and silent, now spoke with clarity and precision. "Operator, I have analyzed potential strategies for larger fleets. Probability of survival remains high if human tactics continue to adapt." Kalen smiled. "Probability doesn't matter," he said. "Creativity matters. Humans matter." As the Titanic drifted through space, now fully awake and dangerous beyond imagination, Kalen reflected on how far they had come. The galaxy had left the Titanic to rot, believing it useless. But humans had taken the impossible and turned it into reality. A forgotten relic was now the most feared weapon in the known universe, all because one human dared to dream, to tinker, and to fight with his mind instead of brute force. And soon, the galaxy would see the full extent of that power. Tomorrow, Kalen thought, would bring even greater challenges. Larger fleets, more cunning enemies, and battles that would test the Titanic in ways no human had faced before. But he was ready. He always was. Humanity had survived against impossible odds before, and it would do so again. The Titanic, once abandoned and forgotten, moved silently through the void. Its pulse cannons gleamed in the starlight. Its engines thrummed with renewed power, and its massive hull reflected the brilliance of countless stars. Somewhere in the galaxy, alien eyes were watching. They didn't yet understand the threat. They couldn't comprehend how a single human mechanic could control a ship of this magnitude. But Kalen did, and that was all that mattered. The galaxy had begun to tremble. News of the ghost battleship had spread faster than any fleet. Alien powers whispered of the human mechanic who had awakened a relic of war, a ship that no fleet had expected to survive, let alone dominate. Callan sat in the command deck of the Titanic, eyes scanning star charts and fleet movements. The largest alien armada ever assembled had entered the system. Thousands of ships, some larger than small planets, were moving in formation toward the asteroid belt where the Titanic had made its home. They had come to destroy it. Callan smiled. Humanity had been underestimated once again. That was exactly how they won. AI, he said. Status report on fleet composition. The AI's voice was calm and precise. Operator, enemy fleet consists of 400 capital ships, 20,000 combat vessels, and over 100,000 unmanned drones. Weapons are advanced with multi-layered shields. Probability of neutralizing the Titanic, low. Callan leaned back in the captain's chair. Low? Good. That means we have work to do. For days he had prepared. Every system of the Titanic had been upgraded, every weapon optimized, every strategy simulated. He had strengthened the shields, recalibrated the pulse cannons, and reprogrammed the autonomous drones to function as independent strike teams. He had converted asteroid debris into mobile traps and set energy mines across the belt. Now, the galaxy would witness the full power of human ingenuity. The alien armada entered the asteroid field cautiously. They had studied the energy surges for days, assuming they were small, isolated anomalies. They had not anticipated a human mechanic commanding a ship the size of a small moon. Callan activated the cloaking and stealth systems. The Titanic vanished from every sensor. The alien fleet searched for hours, scanning the belt, but found nothing. Calmly, Callan moved his massive ship into the perfect ambush position. Then, with a flick of his hand, the attack began. Pulse cannons fired from hidden positions, striking key vessels in rapid succession. Drones darted through gaps in the enemy formations, disabling engines and weapon systems. The alien commanders were confused. No single tactic worked. Their attacks were countered before they even began. Pollen directed the Titanic with precision. Shields were lowered in one sector to lure attackers, then surged at the perfect moment, reflecting beams back to the enemy. Energy channels rerouted power instantly, adapting to incoming fire. Every move was a trap, every counterattack lethal. The asteroid field became a battlefield of confusion. Debris moved unpredictably, controlled by magnetic pulses from the Titanic. Alien vessels collided with hidden mines, were pulled into asteroids, or disabled by energy bursts they couldn't predict. Human ingenuity had turned natural obstacles into deadly weapons. Hours passed. The alien armada fought fiercely, but nothing worked. The Titanic moved like a living predator, its pulse cannons firing in perfect synchronization, its shields responding to every attack. Every attempt to outmaneuver Callan ended in failure. And then he unveiled his final innovation, the core pulse cannon. The cannon had been hidden deep within the Titanic's hull, powered by a combination of ancient energy cores and modern human technology. It could release a focused beam strong enough to penetrate any shield in the galaxy. Callan aimed it at the lead capital ship of the alien fleet. "Time to finish this," he said. The beam fired. Brilliant, unstoppable. It cut through the alien flagship like a knife through fabric. Explosions rippled through the fleet, sending shock waves that disabled dozens of ships instantly. Panic spread. Without their command vessel, the alien fleet began to retreat. Many ships were destroyed, others scattered, and those that survived were badly damaged. Callan did not chase them. The message had been sent. Humanity was no longer a minor species in the galaxy. They could not be ignored. The Titanic hovered silently in the asteroid field. Sparks flew from minor hull breaches, but the ship itself was unharmed. Colin walked through the corridors, inspecting drones, engines, and weapons. Everything had functioned perfectly. Every human innovation, every improvisation, every adjustment had made the impossible possible. He paused in the central dome, looking out at the stars. The galaxy had doubted him. They had abandoned the Titanic. They had underestimated humans. And now, they had seen the consequences. For decades, humanity had been ignored, dismissed as primitive and insignificant. But humans survived where others failed. Humans adapted where others panicked. And humans created where others relied on brute force. Callan knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would recover, fleets would return, and new enemies would arise. But now, humanity had a symbol, a weapon, and proof that even the smallest species could change the course of history. He walked to the engineering bay, where drones were repairing minor damage. He tapped on the console, initiating a new set of tests for additional weapons. The Titanic would not remain static. Humans never rested. They never stopped improving. Outside, the stars shimmered, cold and distant. But inside, the Titanic thrummed with life, a testament to human brilliance. And somewhere in the silent corridors, a small human smiled. The galaxy had left the Titanic to rot, but humans had turned it into the strongest weapon in the galaxy. And Callan, the mechanic who dared to dream, had shown the universe that intelligence, creativity, and determination could achieve what no army could. In the quiet aftermath, alien scouts reported back to their fleets. Stories of the ghost battleship spread like wildfire. Some dismissed it as exaggeration. Others trembled in fear. By the time the tales reached the outer systems, the legend of Callan and the Titanic had begun. And that was exactly how humanity would continue to win. The Titanic, massive and undefeated, drifted through space. Its engines thrummed, its shields shimmered, and its pulse cannons gleamed. One human, one small mechanic had turned rust and ruin into unstoppable power. The galaxy would never forget it. Callan sat in the captain's chair, thinking ahead. Tomorrow, new enemies would arrive, but he had already planned for them. Humans did not rely on size, numbers, or ancient tradition. Humans relied on mind, courage, and creativity. And as long as Callan was aboard the Titanic, the galaxy would never again doubt humanity. The stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and indifferent. But humans, small and underestimated, had carved their mark among them. The Titanic was no longer a relic. It was a legend, and humanity had just begun.